Okay, so I am Joanna Vance. I'm a health science faculty member here at LAPU. And through this summer, we're going to offer 3 45-minute lunch sessions. So I will have you out of here at 12:45 in case you need 15 minutes to actually eat and do some lunch stuff and make it an hour and be back to work. So and these 3 sessions are meant to be conversation openers for us. I think we are at the start of a conversation here at LAPU about how we want to engage AI, how we want to manage AI, how we want to put parameters on AI, how we want to leverage this thing. And we don't have a really strong handle yet on exactly how this is going to go for us as faculty, administrators, for our students, that kind of thing. So these 3 lunch and learn sessions over the summer are meant for us to have a conversation. And hopefully through this conversation, we can shape some ideas about how we want to embrace or not, or somewhere in the middle, AI for ourselves and our students as we go through this next year where this is becoming a bigger and bigger deal. So thank you. It's great to see so many people joining us. I really appreciate it. So the format for this 45-minute session, I have a presentation. It's fairly brief. I will not be talking to you for more than 15 minutes. I'm hoping to keep it just under, because what I want to do, I'm going to present 6 ideas for how I think faculty can be using AI to support instruction. And as I present each of the 6 ideas, I would love it if you could just jot down a couple notes for yourself, because what I'm going to ask you after is where some of these ideas present red flags for you as I'm speaking. If you're having the reaction, "Ooh, we should definitely not be doing that," red flag. If you're having the reaction, "That is the best idea I've ever heard."
I got it. Thank you. Thank you.
Hey, Vakari, could you hit mute, please? I think I might have host rights to mute you, but I'm not sure. So as I'm presenting, if it's a red flag, definitely do not do that. Bad idea, worst I've ever heard. Green flag, I'm so doing that later this afternoon. Or yellow flag, like maybe we could do that, but we got to really think through that intentionally. Those are the ways I'm thinking that you can address each of these 6 ideas that I'm going to present. And then let's talk about how we can use AI as faculty members. So this is not about our students. We'll do that in a different session. This is about us as faculty, how we are going to use AI to work with our students. So my first idea, I've actually used it when I have writer's block, and I've been teaching a while. I know many of you on this conversation have also been teaching a while, and sometimes I get really sick of my own words. I get sick of the way I say things. I get sick of the way I do things. I feel like I can get stuck in a rut, and this can be from simple everyday tasks to bigger picture things. So, sometimes it's Sunday night. That's not necessarily my most energetic time of the week, but I like to get things rolling for my students so that when they log in really early on Monday, there's something up there for them. So I'm in the habit of posting Sunday night announcements. I follow a pretty standard format for these things. I've done that for years. Sometimes I get really tired of the way I do it. And so I'm just sitting there trying to think of something original. It's not coming to me. So I have opened up Chat GPT and said, create a template for an anatomy and physiology, week 1 announcement. I didn't necessarily give it any content. I just wanted to see what it did. And it spit out this for me about 4 seconds later. So I kind of liked it. I actually poached a few ideas for it. So, pardon me. I think it's a great idea in your announcement to say, topic of the week. Overview the reading assignments. This is pretty cut and dry, but there's some things I hadn't been putting in here. Office hours, like when I'm going to be available this week. I'm going to be all day from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. catching up on grading. So that's a great day to talk if you need me. Just reminding students about what's going on. So I'm not going to copy this word for word into my announcements. I don't know if I feel great about that, but you could put in any different kind of prompt into Chat GPT, like create an announcement that inspires students about the respiratory system for week 3. I mean, it'll give you something awesome. And so you probably don't want to use that word for word. Maybe you do. I don't know. You have to be the judge of the ethics on that. We can have a conversation about it. But I think it's a good cure for writer's block. If you're just sitting there sick of the way you do things, maybe you can put it in Chat GPT and 4 seconds later have an idea on how to post it up a little differently. So that's my first idea. My second one, I like to give my students pretty detailed midterm comments. I say the same things over and over, and I put different, I have like different paragraphs, like if they did this, then they get paragraph 1, if they did this, and I personalize it, of course, but I put a lot of the same stuff in there. And I feel like when I have students more than once, sometimes they've heard me say the same thing, and I don't want to repeat the same words with the same students, but I only have so much language. And so I kind of played around with this for midterm comments to see what it would do, because I want to give some students something robust. I don't necessarily love typing any more than any of the rest of you. So I'll show you what I put into Chat GPT, and you can tell me what you think. Red flag, yellow flag, green flag. So for some reason, my little box here, I don't know if you can see that. Okay, so create a midterm summary for Susan, who's a very hard worker, has been late with several discussions, creates great lab videos, and has earned B's on quizzes. So I gave it the content I needed to have addressed. Those are all the things I want to talk to Susan about in her midterm feedback. I want to tell her I see she's working hard. I want to tell her I notice she's been late. What can I do to help? I want to tell her that when she sits down to create a lab video, I'm super impressed. I can see she's prepared. I want to address that I noticed that she's getting B's on quizzes. I mean, I'm not necessarily saying that's good or bad. Maybe she's shooting for a B, but I just want to acknowledge that I'm paying attention to that. And so here's what Chat GPT wrote. I won't read it for you, but what if you took this and paraphrased? What if you went in there and kind of Zoom read through it, like, okay, blah, 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 blah. Oh, that's not quite spot on. I need to change this sentence so it applies more to Susan. I also want to tell Susan this, Chat GPT missed this, but it did a great job of saying these other things. This would have taken me a long time to write. By student 18, I might have been pretty lazy, and their midterm feedback might be a third this length instead of quite this robust. So maybe you could use it for midterm feedback. Maybe you think that that's completely wrong-headed of me to even suggest that. Red flag, green flag, yellow flag. Idea number 3, find resources for your students. Science stuff, this comes up a lot, health science stuff. We've got some good readings in the class. We've got a textbook, depending on what the class is or not. But sometimes I want to give students extra resources beyond what's there. And I might want to give it to one individual student who's struggling with a particular concept. I might want to give it to the whole class. So I don't know, I could old school Google search up some resources and kind of cut and paste them into a doc and send, or show you what I did. Create a list of resources for Christian university students about bioethics. Maybe I could just post this up in my bioethics class. So I took a few things out of each category. I didn't even give it categories. It came up with them. It said, how about some books? How about some websites, academic journals, professional associations, local church and campus ministries, 4 seconds later. And it popped up a little button that said, click this when you want it to stop generating. I could have run this thing for an hour and had 3,500 references. So I just, cut it off, and I clipped out just to show you this, but it wouldn't have, I'm sure it would have stopped at some point, but it would have been a long list. So that allowed me to kind of cull through the list and see, I actually think these are 2 good books. I know what they are. So I pulled those out of the list, out of the 8 it generated before I shut it off. Again, I could have come up with this list. It's not beyond my skill set. It just would have taken me a long time, and Chat GPT did it in 6 seconds. So, red flag, green flag, yellow flag. Okay, another one, idea number 4, I believe we're on. Create step-by-step instructions for things you do not want to type out in detail. So I teach some basic undergrad classes. I know that some of you do too. I've answered the same question now in my career 8,500 times. I like my students, so it's not a big deal, but I mean, and I have most of these answers, frankly, saved in Word docs because they come up over and over and over and over again. And I don't want to reinvent the wheel, because one night I sat down and actually took the time to write an awesome answer to a question I've gotten 55 times. But, what if a new question comes up? Is it okay for me to get some support from ChatGPT for my answer to that question? And I personalize it for sure if a student's asking me something. But I know this has to apply to other disciplines besides science. There's one answer to certain questions. I've already typed it, so I'll save it if it's a good one, if I put some time and effort into it, and I'll use it again. So I mean, I tried so many things just to see how its instructions were and if I thought they were good, and they are really good. So I tried fetal pig dissections of the cardiovascular system, a student who needs more detail than comes in the lab. Maybe a student asked me, how should I write a great discussion response for, in general quiz taking strategies, lots of other stuff. I've had students ask me how to read the periodic table. There's pretty much one answer to this question. There are not 7 different ways to read the periodic table. It's a very cut and dried activity. There's one way. So I could ask ChatGPT to give me those instructions, and this is what it spit out. It kept going, I cut it off, but I could personalize it. I wouldn't have to reinvent the wheel. There's really only one way to read the periodic table. I don't know. What do you think? Red flag, yellow flag, green flag? Creates practice quizzes. It's really good at this. It creates some really nice practice quizzes. So yeah, I can create practice quizzes too. I know how, but do I want to use ChatGPT's really good quizzes? It took it 5 seconds to create, or do I want to spend my entire evening creating one of my own? I don't know. Maybe you think I should have created one of my own. I've done both. I've tried this out. Create a practice quiz covering the digestive system for university students. I could have been much more specific about this. I was just kind of trying to come up with an example for this conversation, but I could have, whatever it is, you can get into the minutia with this. You can really dig deep, create a practice quiz about, something super specific, and it will do it. It's amazing. This one gave me a multiple choice question. I played around with it afterwards and said, give me a fill in the blank quiz. It'll just do whatever you want. So maybe you want to use it to create some practice quizzes. My students love practice quizzes. Helps them figure out if they're on track or not on track. The last idea I have, this is number 6. By the way, give the practice quiz creation red flag, green flag, yellow flag. Create some pretty awesome emails. So again, maybe you love writing emails that have we all know how we're supposed to write emails in the sandwich technique. Hi, how are you? It's great to chat with you. I hope you're doing well, and that all your kids and pets are doing well, and that your flowers are growing and life is great. I also have to tell you that I blah, 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 bad news. And I hope that's okay. Let me know if you want to. We can all do this. We all have the skill set. ChatGPT might do it for you, and then you can edit. So, some students ask me every single week if they can please have an exception and submit late work. If I'm not in the right frame of mind, sometimes I have to really work hard to keep it very, very upbeat and happy and professional and friendly. Maybe I could get some support. So ChatGPT is a robot. It's not going to be like, I'm so sick of this question. It's going to say, I hope this email finds you well, going to address, keeps it very professional. Again, I probably wouldn't send this. I mean, not scratch the probably. I wouldn't send this just word for word because I feel weird about doing that, even if it's better than something I could write. But I might take this as a framework. I really like the way it closes. I'm here to support your learning and academic growth. Appreciate your understanding of the importance of deadlines. I think that's pretty good wording. Maybe I'd just leave that. I don't know. So whatever you have to address in an email, you can be very specific and it'll give you a really, really good output. So I said I was going to keep this to 15 minutes so we have some time to talk about what you think of these kinds of ideas. So I'm going to open the floor up for probably 15 minutes or so, and then I'm going to regroup us. But what I want to talk about in our open conversation here, and I see there's 22 of us, so we should probably in 15 minutes get most people who want to say something a chance to speak. So if you just try to be a little cognizant about time and share with us for maybe 2 minutes what your overall take is. So is there something I talked about in these 6 ideas that you either really, really like or you really, really don't like? Maybe that's where you could start with your comments. Maybe you have something I didn't share here. Maybe you think these are all great ideas. You think these are all terrible ideas. Maybe you want to talk about whether we need policies for instructors or if we can just kind of wing it. So I'm just going to open it up for discussion here. I'm sure you all are going to bring some things to the conversation that I haven't even thought of. And so let's go until about 12:30 with just some open conversation. What do you like? What do you not like about the ideas I've shared? Who wants to start us off?
This is Richard Sands. I don't mind chiming in first. I like all your ideas. I use ChatGPT daily at work and as a director at Providence. I use it here and there with school. And what I have found is that anybody can plug anything in. But it's kind of your expertise and ensuring that it's right. And then, tweaking it. What I found a lot of times in using it gets me very close. And then I like to, make tweaks to it to make it really my own as well. So I think it's an excellent tool. Our leadership, even at our company, did a whole, meeting on it, say, hey, here's a tool, use it to be more efficient. And the way I look at it, it's going from, if we think about DocuSign, we think about Word versus, dictionaries and pencil and paper. I think it's the evolution of technology and to use it appropriately and make it your own. So I support everything you said. Thank you.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Richard.
I'll jump in. This is Josh Morgan. Hi, everybody. Thank you, Joanna, for raising these. And I like, excuse me, I don't have any immediate concerns with any of the things that you said, and kind of, I think, just echoing, Richard, what you were saying. If there are ways that things can make us more efficient and put our brain power to the areas that we need it to be, to me, that's the promise of, and I'm going to definitely say the quote unquote AI. My day job is working for an analytics company where we do AI. So there are a bunch of definitions of AI out there. And so I have a lot of skepticism when we even use the term AI a lot of times, but the generative side like this is different. The part that I think I would want to raise, and I may add some more thoughts and questions for folks around feedback and saving it, Joanna, you were kind of referencing it, is two parts that are kind of related. Is a lot of the ChatGPT is obviously the famous one, but a lot of these generative AI tools, what they sample from is a question mark and is often a black box and is often done unethically and illegally. I've had a couple of side conversations around that. They end up creating content based on material they're not allowed to use for that purpose, ultimately. And so there is a fundamental, foundational ethical conversation around, are we using a tool that, unbeknownst to us, stole somebody else's material? to put a really fine point on it. Secondarily, I have not used ChatGPT or others like that. So I don't know for sure, but I have also seen a lot of reports that it will also, frankly, plagiarize many times. So the generative text, in part because it generates based on statistically what is really the most likely next word in many cases, that we all take plagiarism seriously. We don't want to unintentionally plagiarize. That's a whole nother issue. Craig, I know we've talked about this too, of like students using AI, and now they also get a plagiarism alert and they didn't know. Sucks for them. Really would suck for us if we did that. So I think those are two cautions, and I don't have the answers to them. They're bigger, massive conversations that a lot of folks are having. And there's also a part of, it's out there, right? Like the stuff has been trained on, even if it was done illegally, it's there. Like we can't pull it back. So what do we do with that now? But I think there is that ethical piece. So I'll shut up now.
I agree, Josh. Good call. Good comments.
Oh, okay. So I just want to, when you say that you use it for general resources, well, sometimes ChatGPT invents or makes up the resources. So if you're going to give resources, you have to make sure those resources actually exist. And
that's pretty embarrassing, right? You're like, oh, go to this great resource, and your student's like, I tried.
And ChatGPT is not very good. I teach English. So if I'm doing an anthology, my other school, you can, and I say into the prompt, summarize the short story in XYZ anthology. And then when it summarizes, it will summarize it, but it will summarize stories that do not exist in that anthology. Then it's going to make it up. And I'm like, no, that's not it. And I have to delete it. And so you have to be careful and double check to make sure the stories exist. And also it will summarize it incorrectly. So you have to double check everything when you give sources because it makes things up.
Yeah, that's a good point too. And that's where it's really important as an instructor that you know your content, because if you would just skim the stories, you probably wouldn't even know that it made it up. Like, oh, that's such a great summary.
No, that's not it. And then if I'm not sure, or if I can't remember exactly, because some anthologies have hundreds of stories, then I'll check the anthology and I go, yeah, I remembered right. That story does not exist. And no, that is the wrong summary, just in case I can't remember hundreds of stories that exist in a English anthology or something. For the most part, yeah, and I don't know why it makes it up, why it just simply doesn't say I don't have it in my database. That would be much easier. Sometimes it does say that though.
Yeah, and the difference between version 3.5 to version 4.0 is huge. I mean, it says it's 10 times smarter, and it is, because I've done work in both, and 4.0, especially if you use specific plugins to go to the web to get YouTube stuff or web articles. It's significantly more powerful with 4.0. It's true to what they say.
Is 4.0 free?
No, I believe 4.0 is paid plan, but it's pennies on the dollar. It's a nominal, what, $20-$30 a month, and like I said, I use it every day. It's phenomenal.
Quick question for you: does 4.0, can it differentiate between information that's truly factual and information that is more like in public health? There's a lot of information that's not necessarily scientific in origin. People proliferated internet with information, but when you construct an essay, it may contain, misinformation or disinformation within, and it's categorizing that as fact. Does 4.0 address some of those issues?
I believe so, because I don't proclaim to be, a ChatGPT expert. I just, from using it, 3.5 and lower is only based on, what has been loaded to create ChatGPT, which is up through 2021, I believe.
Yeah.
When you go to 4.0 and add the plugins, then you can direct it to, the web. You can direct it to videos and things of that nature. So again, the power of ChatGPT is exponentially better with 4.0 because it broadens its breadth and depth of data gathering to do the work for you.
Yeah, I use Bard, or I use Google Bard and Microsoft Bing when I want AI, when I'm doing something more recent. Like if I know it's something that came out in 2022 and 2023, then I use Bard and Google Bard and AI Copilot.
Yeah, and with the plugins, like there's two specifically, one for just general web search and one for like video search. Just adding those two plugins, you just opened up the entire web.
And if it's all about how you write your prompts too, because if you're getting false information, you just need to write your prompt a little bit differently, a little bit better for the AI, and it'll give you APA citation. Boom, boom, boom.
Yeah, and the prompt writing, I agree, because sometimes, again, it's applying your expertise. You can't do anything blindly and say, oh, it's ChatGPT, it's perfect. Well, it's not. And sometimes you start with a prompt. I'm like, I didn't want stuff on catfishing or, trout fishing. I wanted something on, scientific dirt bikes or something. I'm just making stuff up, obviously. But you do need to be mindful, and you do need to apply your expertise and what it gives you back, because sometimes it'll give you stuff that's out in left field, Rewrite your prompt,
Sometimes it gives you misinformation. That's completely true. I completely agree that sometimes it gives you misinformation, so you have to be careful. What if we move beyond how well ChatGPT functions or doesn't, and think about what does it look like for faculty as far as policies around Chat GPT? Maybe someone who hasn't piped in yet. Do we need policies? Do we need a set of policies like we have for students around just, old school plagiarism? Or do we just kind of let faculty use their judgment? How do we kind of suggest to administration, as mostly faculty on this call, how we want to be approached about this?
Well, doesn't that fall into the category of, we are professionals, and this university has contracted us for our professionalism and with prudentness that we bring to the school. So I think, the university or anybody else could be mired down in policy. I think just the mere fact of the professionalism we bring to the table, I would like to think that itself would lend to, we would use it in a prudent manner to assist in what we do, and not be the driver, but to assist in what we do, just like Joanna, the examples that you gave earlier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I appreciate that, Richard. What about someone we haven't heard from at all today?
I think it might be worthwhile exploring the idea of citing GPT when we put something out there, if for no other reason than to be a model for our students. If we're using GPT, and again, this gets back to what Richard was saying about the appropriateness and professional, I think that includes being able to cite it as a source. Yeah, how do you cite Chat GPT? Beats me. Hey, check APA in 6 months. They'll probably tell you how to do it.
Yeah.
I just want to highlight John's comment there. I think as academics, we need to model to our students how to be using this tool appropriately and referencing it. And I've encouraged students to, it's helpful in terms of brainstorming, but what I'm telling students is you need to do your own critical thinking once you've looked at that, and you need to write your own submission. And if they're not writing their own submission, they're coming up with 100% AI rate. And then we're reaching out to them, and we're having a lot of conversations with students right now, as Josh mentioned. But again, I think as academics, my thinking would be if we want to use that and we're just pulling it directly from ChatGPT, like anything else, we would quote that.
Mm-hmm.
Joanna, I also wanted to mention, just to your original question about policy, being on the curriculum and policy committee, I know that policies are pretty regimented. Mm-hmm. Maybe what we want to consider is the distinction between like protocols and policies. And there could be something that could be put in place for general protocols or guidelines for instructors, going to the point of, I'm sorry, I'm trying to remember your name, Dr. Sands. Do we need a policy in place now, or do we need some guidelines to help guide our faculty and how to use and cite and all the things surrounding AI?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's totally solid, Shannon. Yep.
I agree with Dr. Sands too. I don't know that we need a policy for faculty per se. We did develop a policy for students to let them know that they need to be using their critical thinking abilities, and Dr. Herman, our Chief Academic Officer, has sent that out. I think as faculty, it's similar to if we're drawing from other resources, again, just modeling the appropriate way to cite. And so I'm not of the opinion that we really need to have a policy for faculty. I think these conversations are helpful just to get some context for what others are thinking about and doing.
Yeah, I agree. Personally, I'm very curious to know if other people are using AI in their classrooms and how. What does it look like if we just fully resist it and say, yeah, we should probably just go on with our lives without this? What does that look like for us as an institution? Yeah, so I really am just very curious about how other people are or are not using AI.
I use it for wrap up, weekly wrap up,
Mhm.
and also lesson overview.
Yep. Okay. Yeah, I mean, that's helpful to know. I think sometimes we operate in so much isolation as online instructors that we really do not know very much about what other people are doing.
It really saves time for the weekly overview.
Yeah. Anybody else already actively using AI, and how are you using it?
You know, I used it to scrape the syllabus and the content in the classroom, and it gives some amazing announcement. I'll do one announcement using that and then do a video announcement of myself, kind of go back and forth, because it scrapes the content from the syllabus, scrapes it from the course, and it does an amazing job. I'll adjust it, of course, because, you know, people want to think, you know, there's more me coming through. But, yeah.
We used it recently, and George can speak to this too, on a team when we were putting together a grant proposal. It helped us come up with like a title for our project, which was helpful because it was more succinct than what we were coming up with. I know in revising classes, they're looking for ways to incorporate more AI. I haven't used it a lot yet, admittedly, but I like the idea that Joanna gave of like announcements, or like we don't use a lot of quizzes, but practice quizzes, that sounds like it can, I mean, all those pieces that Josh mentioned too, like we have to make sure we're backing up, making sure it's all accurate. But there's some pieces that I think that it can be very beneficial for.
I'll throw out there too, you know, George and Craig and I were putting together a course on basically on approach to learning, and have integrated. So it's I haven't done it yet, but we have it planned as pieces in various points too. My personal hope was almost a bit more from that experiential piece of having students do something completely traditionally on their own to develop a thought versus create a generative AI answer to X, Y, and Z and read it. And even that process and reflection of how did your learning differ, right? I mean, so I think that the whole AI and generative piece, I am less concerned about faculty using it. You know, we addressed the pieces, frankly, where the concern is. Shannon, when you're talking about brainstorming, for my own use, I think even in day-to-day, and Joanna, you were talking about getting stuck in writing, I can absolutely see that, you know, get us jump-started. I'm more concerned about student use. And there's that fine line, and Craig, you brought it up a couple times here too, and especially in the classes I teach, I will often tell students, the number one thing I want is critical thinking. It's not even the content as much. I want to see your critical thinking. Just talking to a student about plagiarism again too, of like the pros and cons of balancing a paraphrase versus a direct quote. It's like direct quotes are fine, but if your whole paper is direct quotes, I don't know if you know anything, right? Like you may even cite GPT or do everything correctly. I mean, it may be all accurate content and maybe you've done it ethically, but I'm not seeing your learning and critical thinking process. And I will be the first to say too, I don't know how generative AI fully intersects with our learning processes. I don't think there's enough research out there to know. My suspicion is we've got to do some of the process ourselves as we learn. And so that's my hesitation. I don't think, and George, you've been a big proponent of this, we can't walk away from it. We can't abandon it. It's there. It's going to happen. If we put our heads in the sand, that will cause problems. So we need to be intentional about it. Again, my summary is I'm more concerned and think we need to pay more attention on how do we give students better guidelines, and so it's used effectively there.
Mm-hmm. Should we ask faculty to use it? You know, like just kind of how we don't have, I think there's some really good points made about protocols versus policies. Maybe the last thing any faculty member on the planet has ever wished for is more policies. So maybe protocols like here are the best practices or whatever, but should we ask faculty to use it so that our students are exposed to it and they know we know about it and they know we're working with it too? I mean, is that a reasonable ask of faculty? Get familiar, use this.
I think
if I may say something, so I think that this conversation has so many levels. There are like a minute levels, like should we ask faculty to use it or not? But then we have the deeper levels, such as plagiarism. And I think that even though this is an online community, doesn't mean that we are in isolation with respect to the rest of the world. But one can systematically, especially the administration, systematically go and investigate how all the other colleges and universities are doing this, instead of trying to come up with our own approach to things. I think it's important to ride the wave as the wave is being formed. There are no answers now, because this is something extremely new and people are speechless. Generative AI is evolving much faster than their own creators are intended it to be. So this is, I mean, there is so much said these days, speculated and prophesied about what's going to happen. I do believe that it is doable for LAPU to go and systematically research how other institutions are doing it and come up with the decisions at the level of the administration about how you want to handle it with your instructors, probably redefine what the function of the instructor is going to be. We are not teaching anymore, it's AI teaching. We are not writing our emails anymore, but it's a possibility of AI writing it for us. So what is my role now? What is about when I was hired that it was important that I had good communication skills, both orally and writing ones. What is it that it means that I teach? How do I moderate now that AI is a reality? I mean, I think it's a lot of things need to be redefined. And then from the redefinition, see how we implement it.
Yeah, I agree. And that's one of the reasons why I'm so grateful that all of you took 45 minutes out of your middle of your day to come and have this conversation, because a lot of universities are going that approach where there are some policies being put in place and people are saying, oh, this is a thing, we need to think about this and how this gets addressed. And so coming together as a faculty, which is something we don't do a ton as an online university, but coming together even just to have this simple conversation helps us be out in front of it a little as faculty and the administrators who are here too, just so that we get a voice. How do we want to be addressed about this? And so we can weigh into making suggestions for what some of those next steps look like, instead of just sitting back and being like, yeah, we don't care, just tell us what we can and can't do. I don't think that's necessarily an approach that we want to take. And so I think these conversations are so healthy. George, you made an interesting comment in the chat. Do you want to follow up on that a little bit more?
Oh, the one about it's digital literacy. Yeah, I think, because from what I've seen, everywhere I've gone where people are working, they're using it, period. It is a part of the work world. So if we're not showing them and role modeling that responsible way to use it, are we actually doing them a disservice? And that's a question, because I don't know. But if they need it and we're trying to prepare them to excel outside of LAPU, if we don't show them and teach them how to use generative AI, then are we doing them a disservice within their field of study, their field of work?
Yeah.
And my thought is, yes, we are doing a disservice if we don't, because then we're opening it up to where they might be lured over by the dark side of it, if you will.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Perhaps there should be a course on AI media literacy, just like there's a course on misinformation, just like there's a course on fake news. And maybe something short for faculty as well, AI media literacy. So I think more guidance and policy for both students and faculty would be useful.
We've got about 5 minutes left. What if this is for anybody, and maybe someone who hasn't had a chance to yet? What if you did take that great idea shared about, this? I like what you shared about the summary comment, how you just make your life easier by using probably ChatGPT. I don't know what you use for your summary comment for the week. I like that. Now, should you cite that in your announcement? Should you put at the beginning of your announcement, this announcement was created using ChatGPT?
I don't know how to cite. I mean, it's
well,
just if you just I just use bits and parts of it, and I use it as brainstorming. And so
And
that,
maybe we don't care as much about like the format of the citation. I think I'm more asking like, and this question is for anybody, should you tell your students, hey, I used AI to come up with a summary of our content for the week, and here it is.
I would say yes, because I would like to hear that my students are using it when they use it.
Yeah, so we don't want to have double standards. What do other people think?
yeah, I
think
guess this goes into us properly modeling for the students how to use it. That's what somebody said.
I think that would really need to be thought through very thoroughly, and how the students could, maybe misconstrue or have any backlash. I think that would be something that really need to be thought through.
Yeah, I'm kind of like sitting
I
here
think-
thinking about when I've used it for brainstorming for like writing better emails and stuff. What would the person think if I started my email with, hey, so I used ChatGPT to write 30% of this email. Anyway, what I wanted you to know is, I don't think that would go over so great. I don't know what other people think.
But I think in some ways, this is Daryl, there is an ethical issue to that as well, because, if we are essentially not citing or not telling people how things were generated, we're essentially passing it off as if it's our own words, and it's not. I work in content creation and publishing a little bit, and our new contracts all state that when we contract with SMEs or with writers, that they are contractually obliged to not use generative AI to create their materials, because otherwise they can just go in there and put in a prompt and copy paste, and great, I wrote a book for you, I wrote an article for you in 2 seconds, but I didn't actually write anything. And so I think there is a middle ground there where we use it to help generate ideas, but then also, when people just copy and use it and pass it off as their own, I do think that is an ethical concern.
Absolutely. So 3 minutes left. Anyone who we haven't heard from at all today want to add in thoughts?
I'll jump in and say something. I've been very interested in the ChatGPT conversation since it came out. I haven't used it much. I mean, I've used it a little bit, but I don't feel this pressing time constraint that I need to. I don't want to take the time to deal with it. I just want to do my work. And so, maybe it can help me with things, but I have a pretty dialed in system that I'm happy with, and I'd rather just write the email. So that's just me at this point.
Yeah.
My thoughts on it currently are having gone through school, switching from typewriters to computers, and having a physical dictionary and thesaurus to having Word be able to look up things and tell me other words I can fix, or being able to use SPSS instead of having to know all of the formulas involved with doing data analysis, that there is no way I would want to go back to the manual effort and the time that was involved in doing things in the past, from what we can do right now. And I don't want to be a stubborn late adopter for using ChatGPT and other forms, and then slow myself down and be less efficient. And so I'm trying to tell myself, it's just Google, it's just a computer, or it's just these other advantages that I've been able to have throughout the bulk of my academic and professional career. And in the same way, it's probably supernatural to the students to use it. And so I just have to wrap my mind around that.
Yeah, Jen, I think that's a great closing comment. Yeah, there's some middle ground and we don't quite know where it is yet. I love that comment. Okay, it is 12:45 my time, and I had promised to keep this to just 45 minutes. So I'm going to respect everybody's time here and cut it off. Thank you so much for coming and sharing your ideas and brainstorming with us. We're going to have another 45-minute faculty and administrator conversation in July and one in August. And I hope that you all will continue to come, because I do think, you know, as the academic side of the house, we want to have a say in how we're approached with this, how protocols, policies, nothing, you know, I think we can really shape that if we come together and have these important conversations. So each of the discussions will have a little bit different focus. This one was on faculty. So thank you all for kind of co-creating this content that we talked about. We'll do the same thing at the next one. I'll bring up a topic to start the conversation, but then it'll really be participant led like this, where we're just kind of working together to sort this thing out. So thank you all. Have a great afternoon, and I hope to see you in July at the next one.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Joanna.
Thank you.